record on all platforms. All right.
Hello.
Hello, Robert.
Hello, Eric. This is The Decision, the Nashville EO Chapters podcast.
For those who don't know what EO is, Entrepreneurs Organization, a worldwide organization of entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Which we're members.
Speaking of that, how long, Eric, have you been a EO member?
15 years. It's a long time.
That is a long time.
I was 12 when I joined.
Wouldn't it have been nice to have a group to join at 12?
Yeah. I often tell people that everybody should have a small group of peers to meet with on a regular basis to keep you in check, to help you work through problems. And, we're not the only one to do it, obviously, but it's a good experience. And that's ultimately what we're here to talk about, because we bring difficult issues to our EO forums, and in many cases get resolution, we fix things.
Yeah, we hope to, right?
Yeah.
And the reason that this kind of came about is our chapter has grown, and we're up to 324.
Yeah, and a new class coming in soon
of entrepreneurs who are here in Nashville and part of a community of people. And so, if you're listening, you've never heard of EO before, it's generally when you join a forum of about 7 to 10 members who get together monthly and have a conversation. It's generally about 4 hours, and it's very common to bring a presentation, which is called the deep dive.
Mm-hmm.
And in that deep dive, it's most often a problem that you're bringing to the group to, in fact, get some help,
mm-hmm.
get some experience shares about a challenge that you're facing that you need help with.
Why would I want to hear about somebody else's experiences, Robert?
Oh, that's a great question. Because so often we are stuck with a decision that we need to make. And when you go and ask for advice, there is so many negatives that can happen out of that. Because guess what? Not everyone is going through or has gone through what you've gone through. And when you have a place where people understand that the real value is in the experience share, not in your opinion, to help me with the decision, you get more out of it. I was once in a CEO roundtable, and there was a really awesome dude in CEO roundtable with gray hair. And he was older and wiser in my head, but I had taken a lot of terrible advice that he had no business giving me because he hadn't been there. But now I know the difference. I know the difference between, okay, this guy is giving me advice, but I much rather hear and see bruises and see scars. I want to know that you've walked that dance.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the decision is all about. And when I spoke with you the other day, I was I told you, I said, I am fascinated about the psychology of decision making. And why, Eric, do we not make the most important decisions? We just are stuck. We can't move forward. We know something is wrong. We feel it in our gut. We know what to do. We know the advice we would give a friend,
Right.
but we don't make it. Why don't we make it, Eric?
Well, there's several reasons that I don't. One is it causes other problems. It in many cases it'll either make you work harder. In my experience, it's okay, if I pull this Band-Aid off, I've got a lot of other things to do that I don't know how to do. I know I need to make this decision. I know I need to move forward. I know I need to change this relationship or whatever it happens to be. And I know that there are a lot of other things that have to happen. And maybe in my case, I didn't feel like I would be successful. And so I just delayed it. And I guess, for lack of a better term, just wallowed in my misery and just kept hoping that there would be a resolution that didn't involve any pain.
Yeah.
That
Wait,
didn't work out.
Yeah. It's the not making a decision, which is also a decision, right?
That's right.
And the decision will hit you, and in a time and place when you don't want to have to make that decision. And what we hope to do with this podcast, and the reason we're doing this live podcast episode of the decision, is to really explain the nuance of what we're trying to achieve. Entrepreneurship is a lonely journey. And we are often at a place where we have nobody that knows what it's like to have payroll on Friday. Nobody knows what it's like to let go of control to a leader in your company, to act as if you would make the same types of decisions, and letting go of that and having the consequences of the letting go of entrepreneurship in a leadership capacity. And we hope to have a place where we have a library of challenges, whether it's a divorce or a divorce from a partner in the business, that is a big challenge. It's one thing to divorce someone you love, but imagine that person was a partner in the business too. So there's those kind of stories that we hope to share with other entrepreneurs. And so you have a place to go, hey, someone has walked this dance before. How did they go through it? How did they get to that decision? Is there any decisions that you can think of just in the top of your head that you've struggled with over the years?
Yeah, I was reminded of it just the other day. My wife and I had dinner with my former business partner and his wife. We had a business separation a little over 3 years ago, September of 2019. And, he and I knew many years before that the business as it wasn't really the best it could be. It was a weird situation. It was half of it was managed services and IT, which is what my partner did. And the other half was website development, marketing, which is what I did. And we had a name, Keystone Business Solutions, still in operation. It's only managed services now. Mike runs it, 100% owner. And, it creates all kinds of problems. As a marketer, it created the issue of, what exactly do you guys do? Why are these two disparate things connected? It made more sense in 2003 when we started the business, because in many cases, when business owners said, hey, we need a website, it's time. Well, let's throw that to the IT guys. IT and web were closely connected because it was viewed as an IT function. But that changed over time. And we began to realize it. We, made some changes and started analyzing the P&L differently, and just realized that we were not a good fit. But it just took a long time because we were friends. We still are. And it was going to be painful no matter what we did. And I think I should have pressed harder to make it happen. I was kind of holding the thing back, honestly.
Yeah.
But I wanted to hear him say, "Yeah, I think we should split," which eventually happened. And then 5 months later, we were separate. And so my forum, God bless them. I don't know how many times I talked about that situation. And when I finally told them that it was actually happening, I think a cheer went up in the room. It's like, thank God good for you, Eric, but thankfully we don't have to listen to this anymore. You can now bring other problems into the room.
Well, it's so funny you should say that, because I've been in multiple forums where a formate is in the struggle and will bring up the issue several times a year, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're sitting there going, holy cow, dude, just take the bull by the horns and do something about it.
Right.
And but it is this weird sense of this we always fear the unknown, obviously. We always play stories in our mind. And it's just funny because your gut is telling you, like, I am starting to learn as I get older that your gut has a mind of its own and will be anxious and have this low level of worry when a subject that is a decision that you just have to make. You have to, and it could either show up when you're interviewing, it can show up with that one member of the team that just don't fit, that is out of place, that is hurting you more than he is helping you. And you're so fearful of letting the decision make another decision that you're going to make. And we all know this, that the hard decisions are the right decisions.
Yeah.
The easy decisions that we make are always hard in a different way. Easy is putting off to let this person go. And then eventually when they do quit, or you find out they've stolen from you, or those are all the things that I've seen.
Yeah.
Because it's like, there is no easy.
So I have a question for you. And you've been in, between the two of us, we've been in forum for 25 years, probably. Have you've probably heard a deep dive on, should I keep this person? Should I let them go? Have you ever had anybody come back the next month and go, man, I really regret letting that person go?
Oh gosh, you just hit me with something. I just no, I have not.
Never
Never
has it happened. So, and the way I began to look at it was, if I let this person go, they're gonna be okay. They're probably gonna find a job or a situation that's better for them. Maybe they'll go start their own business.
Oh, I know. And the thing that I've realized after the fact, it's easy to do in hindsight, right? I had a key leader of my team that was great to a certain point, and then it became abundantly clear that I need to separate. But he held grudges, and I saw the grudges he would hold. And I'm a people pleaser. I really want to. I want to be liked. I'm just to be humble. That's just my nature and my DNA, and it's just a fault of mine that I know I have. And I didn't make that decision, and it would have served him. He would have felt a little pain. He would have picked himself up. He's a great leader, and he would have excelled. And I did him harm not letting him go.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? When the dust settled, I still suffer the consequences because I didn't do the right thing. I should have done it way earlier. And now he's holding a grudge against me. And so the fear that I had, that I was trying to prevent in the very beginning, it still got me. And there's nothing bad I would ever say about him in that regard, other than it's just recognition that, sometimes the hard decisions that we want to make, we think they're bad for the other person, and they're not. They may feel wonky at first, but the freedom of finding people that you care and love, and you let them go, and they can be in their best somewhere else for someone else, And that's just the lessons that we all get from all of these experiences.
Yeah, I believe that very few people love change. I like change, but sometimes I don't want to deal with it at that particular moment, which I talked about just now. Yeah, sometimes people need that. I think it's if you don't recognize that everything ends eventually, everything comes to an end. You're doing yourself a disservice. And people that work for you, work with you, all clients, they're eventually going to go somewhere else. Maybe the company dissolves. Everything ends. Just I try to keep that in my mind because I get in these ruts where I'm doing the same thing over and over and over again. And I think it's healthy to understand that, well, this is just not, it's not going to go on forever. So let's maybe make a change. Or if it's a person, it's another thing to consider in business, especially is if you are, if you're running a business and you're trying to grow it, say you're at $1 million in revenue, the people that you needed to get to $1 million in revenue are not necessarily the same people who will get you to 5 million in revenue or 20 million in revenue. And that happened to me. I had a long tenured employee, and he was great at the beginning, but it just he did not see the vision for where we were trying to go, and he would question the choices that we were making. Not just me, it was our leadership team, and it was just pretty obvious that it was no longer a fit.
Yeah,
and love the guy. I consider him a friend. I'm happy to see him succeeding now, but it was hard for everybody. There were a lot of entanglements there. And as humans, we're going to have those emotional ties to people, and those changes are not just difficult for us; they're difficult for other people. And then something you said earlier, the guy that is holding the grudge against you, I began to realize, I can't remember who said it, that, and I'm a people pleaser as well. You are the villain in somebody's story. Everybody is the villain in somebody else's story at some point.
Yeah.
And then you just got to live with it.
Yeah. And it makes me ask myself should I be the villain for more people in terms of am I trying hard enough? I'm going to mess things up. I'm going to break things. I'm going to upset some people. And that's kind of what you do when you step outside your comfort zone. Mm-hmm. You're not going to make everyone love you. And I have to get out of that headspace too. I am not for everyone. Yep. I am not going to be, I'm going to try my best. I don't want to hurt someone. Right. But at the end of the day, part of what I believe that EO does for us is it really helps us shine the light on our own personal growth. What are we learning? You could say, well, what is EO? It's an entrepreneur organization, a group of entrepreneurs, but it's really a group of men and women navigating life, figuring out what matters. And at the end of the day, when you really stop and think about it, if we do it right, if we do entrepreneurship in the right way, it has nothing to do with business. It has everything to do with your business is a resource for you to live a deep, meaningful life. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is a lot of challenges with the business as a resource and all the mechanics, but I have gotten so much personal growth by standing in events, meeting interesting people, hearing about their family, hearing about what it's like to be a dad. All of those things matter to me. And that's what is, I think, really interesting about the way EO is bringing in the personal and the business.
I have a perfect example of that, and you're well aware of it. You and I, communications co-chairs of EO Nashville, began to get to know each other even better than we did before. I realized that I was drinking too much and had been for many years. and had a conversation with you about it because I know you've been down this road. You shared your experience with me, a very personal thing. And I made the decision to stop drinking almost 6 months ago. It was August 27th was when I decided. And that decision has started me down a path of being a better husband, a better father, certainly a better business leader, business owner. And it was a personal thing, but it has business implications. And I think that's true of everybody. We're not just business people. We don't just do business. There's a lot of moving parts to each human being. And that's the one thing, to go back to where we started this conversation, that the power of that small group is you get to have conversation with a small group of people on a regular basis, people that are in that group, hopefully long term, and you get to share what's going on in your life, and you get open, honest feedback from others. You get to hear what they see. You get to talk to them about the struggles you have and get their feedback, get their experience. It's again, it's changed my life, and I'm sure if my forum mates were here, so 4 of whom I've been in forum with for 15 years,
Wow,
would be able to tell you a long number of things that I've struggled with and overcome.
well, hats off to you, number one, for making that decision. And the journey of sobriety is like layers on an onion that just start peeling off. And you've probably experienced times where you had this gut feeling like this isn't working. And this is so funny how sobriety and decision making all intertwined, because when you think about, you have that gut feeling, that this nagging thing in you with the decision you're trying to make, right? It's I can't decide why I have this weird feeling. You know what? I have this weird feeling. I don't like this weird feeling. Let's have a drink. Let's watch a movie. Let's escape. Let's go do something. Let's run away from the gut, which is just seeking an expression to solve something you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so what do? We run away from the gut. We run away from it. And then the problem just grows. The problem starts to increase. And what's beautiful about the act of sobriety that you're walking down is we get on a call together, and the universe is actively working for us for some weird reason. I haven't quite figured it out yet, but I don't want to get too deep with this so far. But it's so funny because I have in my mind is like, I feel like we need a sobriety group in EO, and it was in my mind. And then we get together on a board meeting call. They put us in a room to the Zoom call, and you're like, hey,
it was just the 2 of us, right?
Yeah. And it's like, you're like, what if you did this sober program for EO and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh yeah, I've been thinking that is so bizarre. And we have a group. We started in January. We have a group. It's on WhatsApp. If you are listening, you are welcome to join. We're happy to give you the link. And I've been sober for 6 years. I saw what it did for me. I mean, it's tremendous business growth through the journey. I had tremendous family growth, personal growth. I mean, probably the fastest way for monumental change that a human being can do, who is also a heavy drinker, can eliminate that one thing and make a difference. And I'm on my second sober journey because my first one was alcohol. And then as I was dealing with lots of shit and stress, I started using weed. And I started using weed ever so slightly more every single year. And when things got crazy, when I was losing the business in 2020 and things beyond my control were going on, I used it even more. And then when I sold the business and dealt with the loss of the business, then I used it way more than that. And it wasn't until I had a moment that happened. One day I'll share this story where I'm standing in Costa Rica and I have a drug dog laying his head on my bags. That was a defining moment for me. Mm-hmm. And what helped shape what would be there for a decision in July to stop. And we all have these little moments in time that I find interesting. Like, how do we, and this is the question we ask with the podcast. This is my way to figure out what about me can I learn from others and how people can do these decisions without all the pain and struggle. Like, how can I get faster at the practice of making better decisions quicker without all the suffering, without all the anguish that happened as a result of the delayed decision?
Mm-hmm. I think about that. You've told me that story before about the dog, and I was thinking last night, why are the reasons that people make decisions? Well, number one, the pain of continuing on is worse than the pain of making a change. I think that's true of any decision. So, the pain of, and you escaped it, the pain of going to a Costa Rican jail or prison was worse than putting that aside and living a sober life.
Yeah. And it's funny how we have signs that we choose to ignore, and we're just going so fast. And what I love about what an EO experience in a form can do is men and women calling you on your bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
The best formates you can have in form. This is an announcement. Please do this to me. If you see me bullshitting you, call me out, right? There's something special about grown people being frank with you and being like frank in a loving way to let you know what is, who you are showing up like. Because we do this, like and EO is not and it should not be a place where you get in a room and everybody tells you how wonderful you are. Okay. There's plenty of other places you can do that. In that, maybe that's best for social media place, maybe. But in terms of, if you want to grow, you need to have people willing to point you in a different direction and say, what you're doing is not working. You brought this to form 3 or 4 times. You're not going to make a decision. Like, what is your problem, Robert? Like, there's been situations where I've been with formates that would just not make a decision. I just want to grab them and be like,
yeah.
But how do you get that? How do you get someone that is broken and they're just stagnant? How do you get them kicked into gear?
For me, I've had forum mates tell me that, hey, you've talked about this multiple times. Do you need help? Or I think that's something that you should maybe ponder at length. Just small comments like that. They're non-judgmental, that they're bringing to light the fact that I'm obviously struggling, and that maybe it's something that I should not just struggle with, I should wrestle with and try and figure out. And I don't really need any help from my forum mates. They already tell me exactly what they think already. But that's the beauty of having that long-term relationship in a structured environment. If anybody's listening to this and you don't understand the concept of the EO forum, there are rules around what sorts of feedback that you can give. But for me, sometimes it's painful to hear. It's not what I want to hear at that particular time, but it's good to hear it. And I have processed feedback like that before and wrestled with it and just said to myself, well, it's not time to make that change, or I don't agree with what they have to say. And, they could be right, and I have to live with it. And maybe it's something I figure out later, but at least we had that conversation, and it's as non-judgmental as it can possibly be. They got it off their chest. I've been able to accept it and do what I want with it and move on.
Mm.
And those conversations don't happen for everybody, I think. I think many times about the opportunities I've had to tell people what I think and did not when it possibly could have helped them. And one of our company core values is be bold in the communications industry. If you think everything's going to go swimmingly well during a project, it's not going to happen. There's got to be difficult conversations. And so I'm constantly reminded that if we're going to get better as a firm, or we're going to help somebody else be better, we have to have those difficult conversations.
Yeah, and it one thing I did notice that I've noticed, I don't know if you've noticed, but when you made that decision for sobriety, did it make other decisions easier? Have you felt a sense of I can make big decisions and big things can come of this after the fact? I mean, how has that showed up in other areas after making a big one like that?
So I think the biggest shock about it was, obviously I know I'm going to wake up feeling better every day. But the anxiety that I was feeling for years, and it wasn't just from separating from my business partner, starting a new business, essentially, then having to deal with the pandemic and all that stuff. I was experiencing lots of anxiety, and a couple of months in, I realized, somebody in my forum mentioned anxiety. I was like, oh wow, I have not been waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, unable to go back to sleep. That's the perfect example of it. It just was one of those things I had not really considered, even though somebody in my forum told me that it probably would happen. And then I was having a conversation with my doctor one day. It was a televisit, and he asked me how I was doing, and it hit me like lightning. Oh, I need to tell him that I don't have joint pain anymore. I love to play guitar and play the drums, and drums, especially when you're trying to hold sticks and get warmed up to play. It's very difficult if you're a drunk and you've got these joints that you're putting toxins into on a regular basis. And it struck me. And I know there are going to be more things. I'm just at the 6-month mark. But I'm getting better every day.
Yeah. So yeah, that's all you should hope for. And it's funny, about a year in, I was with my family driving down the street to my house, and I noticed billboards I'd never seen before. It was like one of those things that just became super aware of. And as I navigated through, I had this really profound moment where I had a night where I drank too much and I was exhausted. I had a 6-hour drive to go visit a store in Johnson City, Tennessee. Forever drive, right? Yeah. And it was one of those days where everyone in that store was just doing the exact opposite of everything they ever learned to do. And they also had a bad day, And I will never forget happening. I was getting out to my car, and because of that particular store was right next to another store. There was literally two. I had some Sprint stores. We had 2 Sprint stores with a retail establishment between 2 stores, and Sprint wasn't willing to tell one of us to shut down. And it was like this standoff between these two dealers, right? And I was so exhausted, so frustrated, and I happened to see the district manager for the other location walk into the door, and I literally said, dude, I give up. I am done. And I had no energy, because you need energy to make. Energy is a requirement for maintaining decisions, because you will give up with lack of energy. You will make drastic decisions. And in hindsight, I literally gave away the location, made sure my team had some staff. But in hindsight, when I sold the business, I discovered that the dealer that I literally gave the store away to was their number one store. The store was made so much money, like several $1 million mistake as a result of not having energy, because of doing. And it was probably one of my biggest regrets in business is, you have to have energy. All we are beings of energy. Your company is an energy source. And And when you don't have the energy, your place of negative energy just feeds off everyone else. In your bad mood, you're short in a meeting, you're short on a phone call with somebody that's important because you didn't get good rest and you didn't analyze the situation right. Like, we have to be super nuanced with our communication styles, right? And it's tough to be really aware of how someone is acting a little strangely, right? That would require me to modify my language because I need to tiptoe a little bit. There's something here I haven't figured out yet. And that's what you get when you have good energy. But, alcohol can somehow really affect that.
Yeah. I mean, running a business is hard enough without drinking a substance that your body metabolizes and turns into literally toxic. It's toxins. I can't remember the specific name, but I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole.
Because we got a lot of drinking fans here, hey, listen, it's all in the doses, right?
That's right.
It's all in the doses. That's what they tell me.
I was dosing too much.
I was dosing way too much too, but I do miss it. So let's talk. Change the topic a little bit. So this podcast is for EO chapter members to come share, and this is a call out to you. You have a story that needs to be shared. Okay, this is a story of a struggle that you may have had that you brought to form. And what we want to do is have a place to interview you, to pull that challenge up. I want you to go back to that feeling. I want you to share that experience of what brought you to that place where you needed help and you needed experience share from other people. We have in our portfolio of episodes so far is we have our first episode, which you can find on Spotify and iTunes. The first episode is about how to give a deep dive presentation to form. And it's really the tips and tricks on how to do that. And Colton Mulligan is on that podcast. He's a form Sherpa expert that really walks through what he sees that works. And what we hope to do out of that episode is really help a new form that's just now formulating. And like, say you're a brand new EO member and you want to really understand how to do it better, or do it well, because it's your first time, or you're an existing member, like maybe it's not working. You've done previous presentations or deep dives, but you haven't really gotten any value out of it. And so you must ask yourself, is it the form doesn't really understand how to do this well? Is there not coaching happening? Like, how to do it well?
Yeah. And if you are relatively new, or you're in a forum where you feel like you're not getting what you expect, I mean, dig in, listen to this podcast and look for more resources. EO's got a ton of resources on how to do forum the right way. I think the episodes that we have in the can with Colton as the guest are going to be impactful for you.
I learned a lot. Like, I learned just the new language of the deep dives and the Gestalt stuff that was kind of heavily talked about at some point, and that we leaned into heavily, which we still do. It's just part of our DNA on how to go about that process. And there was, so, as time goes on, we're going to be adding, we want more stories. So if you out there, have a good story to tell. What we ultimately want to do is understand why you had the issue. How did you do the presentation? How did the coaching go? If you were able to go back to your form and give feedback, what would be the advice you would give? Right. And then ultimately, what was the outcome? Because hopefully a lot of these stories are going to come out with years past of decisions, and what was the final outcome? Was it the right choice? Whatever you decided, good or bad, did you make the right choice in that? What was ultimately the end of the story? Because a lot of times we don't get to do that. Even in form, we don't really know what happens. It's like this big thing we talk about, and then months later you're like, where are we?
Yeah. So that reminds me, our forum secretary, Ian McCollum, he's our permanent secretary, which is a great role. If somebody is a great note taker, someone who's very organized, as Ian is, he documents the issues that we have expressed over 3 years running now.
Oh no, there's a record.
There's a record.
Evidence.
It's private.
Oh no.
But we met, I guess it was last week, and he brought up, here's what you talked about last meeting. Here's what you talked about a year before that, and a year before that. And you can see sometimes there are patterns there, especially if you're talking about the same thing over and over again. It begins to show up, and you can see what victories you've had, what things that you have gone through, maybe presented on, and resolved in some way, shape, or form. And it's a little bit of an endorphin rush when you hear, oh, I was struggling with that 2 years ago, and I fixed that, and I've moved on. It's a great feeling.
That's really good. I'm taking that lesson down as my first official learning about form, because it's another thing I'm learning. And the reason we do this is because, is it that we are experts in form?
Nobody's born and being an expert.
We are eager to learn. If you're listening to this, you are also eager to learn, because that's what part of being EO is all about. Being open to what you don't know. What can we learn together as a group as we get together and do awesome events and have good fellowship with friends and colleagues with a proper form experience.
Yeah. That proper forum experience too is something that when I was president a few years ago and got the opportunity to meet and talk to a lot of EO people, and they would confide in me as my forum is not what I expected it to be, or it's okay. Why? And inevitably, every single one told me, well, we got people not showing up. They're not showing up on time. They're not prepared. Just follow the rules. That's In music, that is, there's a concept of learn all the rules so that you can then artfully break them and create something new. Now, we're a 15-year-old forum, so there are things that we're doing that are kind of, EO knows this. There are other types of forum presentations you can do, but they are not the sort of things that you would want a first-year forum to try and pull off, because somebody would probably get their feelings hurt. We've known each other for a really long time, so we're able to do some of those acrobatic tricks that we wouldn't entrust others with. But if you follow the rules, you show up on time, you're prepared, you follow the agenda, you do the things you're supposed to do, you're typically going to end up with a good result.
And the form experience is your experience.
Right.
And if the form experience isn't where you need it to be, you have to step up.
Make the decision to do something different.
Yeah, and a lot of that is that, hey, form, it's not working for me. Mm-hmm. And often that is the catalyst for change. It just, someone has to, and like someone else is in the form, they know it. Everybody's like, yeah, I just wasn't willing to say it because so-and-so is a moderator and I really like what they're trying to do, but they're busy. And I get it. Like, all of that is true. And it doesn't take a lot to really whip a forum back in shape. You just got to care, and as long as the members in the forum care and are open and willing to like make the necessary change, then you can move to go forward.
Yeah. And that I told several people that same thing. It's like, I guarantee you're not the only person in the forum thinking the same thing. If you'll express it, you'll have some people that fall in behind you, and that's how change begins.
Awesome. Well, Eric, I'm excited to have you as the co-host of The Decision. This is our first launch of The Decision, and I just want to say thank you for watching. Please subscribe on Spotify and iTunes. You can find The Decision, Nashville EO. Thanks for watching.